Imposter syndrome sucks so hard. And if you are a creative person in any way and you are on the edge of putting your work out there or actually dedicating yourself to finishing something or getting feedback in any way or putting yourself into the hopes and dreams of what your creative output might someday bring to your life, like income and fame and readers and whatever else might be involved there, you probably have been feeling some imposter syndrome, which is this crippling, sometimes fear of what if everybody finds out that I'm a fraud? What if I can't actually do this? What if I'm not good enough? What if nobody ever reads my books? What if this breaks my heart because this wasn't actually meant for me? I am a fellow traveler on this journey. If you are somebody who struggles with doubt and fear and imposter syndrome and it holds you back and makes you feel resistance, you're not alone. You're not alone in this. So, in today's video, we're just going to sit on the floor here in front of my bookcase, which is my evidence that you can conquer imposter syndrome and be successful anyway. And we're just going to have a heart to heart. So, if you've ever struggled with fear, imposter syndrome, feeling resistance because you're scared of what the result of this is going to be, you are in the right place. So, let's talk about it. Hey, everybody. So I have settled in on the floor so that we can feel like this is just a heart to heart little chat here, as well as the fact that I have evidence and proof behind me that you can conquer this. Because I am telling you right now, I had the worst imposter syndrome when I first started out. And in fact, I also had some people around me in my life that only amplified that imposter syndrome. So you can raise your hand in the comments and we'll give each other big hugs if you had that same thing. Because I had people in my life who didn't believe that I was capable of becoming an author, or who said things like, that's not a real job. Do you know how many people want that career and they never get it? You're just going to spend your whole life feeling disappointed. You need to find a real job. Even when I wanted to be a singer, which was my first love originally, actually writing was my first love, but then I decided I wanted to pursue opera singing. I had so many people telling me, like, it's so rare to get into that. Better get used to eating raisins and applesauce or ramen noodles or whatever, because you're never going to be able to make that a career. And so you've got that external voices that make you doubt yourself, but it's really the internal critic. It's that inner critic, that inner voice that says, what if? What if you're not good enough? What if people find out that you're a fraud, that you don't actually know what you're talking about? And this can bring in both a fear of failure, of nobody's ever going to read my work, nobody's going to care about this, it's never going to be good enough. But also, annoyingly, it can also bring in a fear of success, of what if people do read my work? What if it gets so big that people start to criticize me? What if people start reading it and then they realize I'm not any good, or that I've accidentally copied someone else, or that my ideas weren't original enough, or I don't deserve the success that I've had? And both of those fears, or the thought that this could someday happen to us, can be completely crippling. So I made some notes in my little journal here, and we're just going to talk about kind of what imposter syndrome is and how it shows up. And my hope today is that as we are embarking, we're 1 week into the Rough Draft Challenge here in the Heart Breathings community, but anybody who's working on a creative project or a book of your own, I hope that when you listen to this, you get a little bit of encouragement, and that you know that you're not alone in this, that it may feel like truth when your brain is telling you you can't do it. There's all these bad things that could happen. You're not safe. Who do you think you are pursuing this dream? Any variation of that, our brain tells us these lies, you're not alone, and it's not the truth. It's simply a mechanism that your nervous system, your brain, has come up with to try to get you or keep you from going after something that it feels is scary and is going to put you outside your comfort zone. That's literally all it is. Now, I do want to say that some of the fears are valid. Maybe it's something that you have experienced in the past. Maybe you put yourself out there. Like, I did a talent show in the 3rd or 4th grade, and people did laugh at me. And so bad things happen, right? I have gotten bad reviews. Almost every single YouTube video I put out in the world, somebody comments something negative about how I look or who I am or how I do things. Negative criticism is a reality of any creative business when you are putting yourself out there for other people to judge. It's just a part of it. So that alone can feel crippling. But what I'm talking about too is the feeling inside of ourselves that the inner critic, that inner voice will try to convince you is so scary and so dangerous that it's going to hurt you to a point that you can't recover, that it's worth not doing because it will hurt worse than it will help. And that is one of the great ironies of this business or of any creative endeavor where we want to actually share it with people is that we want to write these stories, most of us, so that somebody else will read it and get something out of it and get joy out of it. But at the same time, we also are afraid that if someone else reads it, they're going to criticize it. And the truth of it is that if you put yourself out there and you get any variation of success, you're going to have both. You will have people who criticize and you will have people who love it. And there is no scorecard in the sky that's going to tell you, well, you came out ahead over here, or you actually were good enough and that person's wrong. It's always going to be up to interpretation. Art is always going to be up to interpretation. And that is part of what makes this whole thing so difficult. So, what we're going to talk about today is really like, how does imposter syndrome show up? Because it might be showing up in ways to hold you back that you haven't even identified yet or understood yet. And then, two, how the heck do we get over it? How do we keep moving forward, even though imposter syndrome is, part of the creative experience? And so hopefully some of this will be helpful. Right now in the Heart Breathings writing community, we are going through what we call the Rough Draft Challenge, which is a monthly challenge to work on your book for the entire month of July. But you can do this any month, obviously, but it's just an excuse to get into community, which is one of the keys, I think, to getting over imposter syndrome, is just knowing that you're not alone, knowing that these fears are something we all experience, and, have that community to hold you up and be your cheerleader and your hype person to say you can get through this, and to know that you have friends that you can lean on if you do get a bad review. I think our human brains are wired to take the negative feedback more as truth, and the positive feedback is like a fluke. And that is something that I think that we can rewire in our own brains, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's talk about some of the ways that imposter syndrome shows up and like the lies that it tells us. So essentially at its core, I think imposter syndrome is just fear, right? It's our brains are wired, our nervous system is wired at its deepest part to keep us safe. And as long as we're doing the things that we have always done, even if those things have been hurtful or harmful, as long as we're doing it, it's familiar. And our brain and our nervous system sees the familiar things as things that we have already survived and we have already overcome. Even if it's not something that's pleasant, it is survivable because we have been through it before. And our brain has that evidence of, oh, we've done this before. So even if you've started a novel, 12 different novels, 20 different novels, and never finished them, your brain says, oh, okay, well, this is something we do all the time. We start a book. But when you get to the farthest point you've ever gotten, or you write something that you really liked, or you start talking to people who are publishing, or you start watching and following people who are moving on to the next step in the process, like beta readers and editors and, anything that puts you outside of the experience that you've had so far, this little voice is going to come up, this inner critic, this imposter syndrome voice inside you that's going to be like, wait a minute, you're going to make a fool of yourself. Who do you think you are? Nobody's going to read this. This isn't original enough. Insert your favorite way of self-sabotaging, your favorite inner critic dialogue. And, our brains are very sneaky, and it knows what to say to us because, it's part of us, obviously. It knows what to say inside our brains, this inner critic part, in order to get us to stop doing the thing that feels scary. And if you've started a book or you've started a creative project 1,000 times and never finished it, that feels safe because it's never led to anything dangerous and you've survived it. But once you start editing, putting yourself out there, posting on social media, starting a YouTube channel, anything that puts you in a leadership position or puts you in a new level of visibility or a way that you're setting new boundaries with your creative work or with yourself. Like you say, I'm going to write every day for 2 hours. That can trigger the imposter syndrome and the inner critic. Trying something new, any new visibility, anything that you start dreaming of that is outside of your already lived experience is potentially going to trigger this imposter feeling. And like I said, it's not always going to be this feeling of like, oh, you're an imposter. It will take multiple forms. So I wrote down some of the most common ways that I see it take form in people. Like, and also before we talk about the most common ways, let's talk about where it comes from besides just when you're stepping out in a new way in your life. It also sometimes comes from comparison, right? So this is a trap that many of us fall into where you start following a bunch of authors because you want to self-publish too, or you want to get an agent. And then suddenly it starts looking like everybody's got a 7-book deal, or everybody's got a 6-figure deal, or everybody's announcing something on Publishers Marketplace, or everybody's getting new covers. And it seems like your brain is filtering in all those successes that everybody else has. And it makes us think, well, everybody else has it figured out. I'm so far behind. Who do I think I am, thinking I could have this as a career? And that can immediately shut down our creativity because we don't feel inspired by failure. Well, most of us don't. We feel crippled by the thought of how we're not measuring up to everybody else. So comparison is one big trap, and we'll come back around to that when we talk about ways to overcome imposter syndrome. Another one is perfectionism. So perfectionism, I think it was Liz Gilbert once said, perfectionism is just fear in fancy clothing. And I just love that. It's always stuck with me because perfectionism looks on the outside like, well, I just have really high standards and I'm just a really, I like every little detail to be perfect. And I couldn't possibly put it out there because I have high standards. I have a certain way that I need it to look. It has to be just like this or it won't be successful. And we can tell ourselves these things that make it seem like we're just trying to create the best possible product. So raise your hand in the comments. I know we have people here who you just have been editing the same chapters over and over and over again. Maybe your experience is too that you have never even gotten past the first couple of chapters of your book because you just keep polishing it and editing it and polishing it. And then eventually you hit a point where you're like, this is never going to be good enough, but this other idea could be much better, right? Sound familiar? I know it's going to be familiar to a lot of people because that's our brain using perfectionism as a way to keep us safe because it seems logical. I just want it to be really good, right? That sounds like good thing, like a high value system, when in fact, it's a self-sabotage secret agent. And it is really fear showing up to help you procrastinate, right? It's telling you, don't finish that thing. Don't put yourself out there. It's safe to work on it, but it's never safe to finish it. And it becomes this tricky little thing because instead of saying, I'm afraid to publish that, we say, I can't publish that because it's not good enough. And that sounds true and it sounds noble. So it's another way our very intelligent nervous systems and our brains convince us that we're not ready, is perfectionism. A third way is identity. So if you have an identity at your core of, I'm not a very good author, or I'm really shy, or I have never been somebody who wins at life. Like if we have a self-belief that I'm a beginner, that I'm not super talented, or I'm not very smart, or like I never get first place, whatever that story or that identity of our past might be, when you start to say, well, I'm going to self-publish, or I'm going to try to get a publishing deal, or I'm going to finish this book, I'm going to be a novelist, or even if you show up at a family barbecue and you say, I'm an author, you feel like an imposter because your identity is of a beginner, of a newbie, of someone who doesn't have it figured out yet. And so what you're trying to do is claim an identity that you haven't adopted yet. So feeling like you're claiming the identity of author feels like an imposter. And this is even things that I see indie authors, self-published authors who have sold thousands of books. will still feel weird about calling themselves a real author because they don't have an agent or they didn't get chosen by the system, which I think is, normal, but also completely untrue. If you've sold books, you're an author. If you've finished a book, you're an author, right? So we should be able to claim that, but it sometimes is that identity gap of like, I don't see myself as a real author yet because I haven't reached some invisible milestone or I haven't really just elevated myself to that new identity yet. And I think sometimes those are just some of the ways that we get triggered with imposter syndrome and the ways that it shows up in our lives that are kind of sneaky. Now, what are the lies that it tells us? Okay, so one of the lies that imposter syndrome tells us that tries to convince us not to move forward and causes all this resistance when we're moving forward is everybody else has it figured out but me. So, and I would love to see comments. Like, I originally was planning on doing this talk live, and that would have been great because I think this would be a really good thing to have a discussion on. So, if this really resonates with you, please comment down below and say, I want to do this as a live event too, so that we can have a conversation around it. Because I think this is the type of topic that could use a really good conversation and not just me talking to you. But does this sound familiar? Everybody else has it figured out. Like, I'm an imposter because I don't yet have the skills. I don't have that kind of knowledge. Oh my gosh, look at everything that that person has accomplished. This goes back to some of that comparison, right? But also it goes to that feeling of, I do not yet identify as the type of person who has this figured out. But let me tell you right now, none of us have this figured out. I have sold 1 million books. I've made over $2 million in profit just with the books that are sitting behind me on this shelf. And I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing half the time. I sit down, or even when I'm thinking about writing, currently I'm working on book 2 of my series called The Shadow Games, and the name of the book is A Throne of Thorns. This is my 30-second full-length novel that I have published. I have 5, I think, other full-length novels that never have been published, that never got edited. I have written almost 40 books and countless short stories and other things. I still resist sitting down to write because I'm like, what if I can't do it? What if it doesn't come out on the page the way that I see it in my head? I see it like a movie. What if I can't get it? And then sometimes I sit down to write and it isn't coming out the way that I expected. And that feels super frustrating. And then comparison trigger, perfectionism trigger. I start to think, who do I think I am trying to do this? Like, when I was working on my book, The Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw, which is a murder mystery and it's dual timelines and multiple POV, I knew I had bitten off more than I could chew. And the whole time I was working on that book, I thought, who do you think you are thinking you could write this mystery? It's going to be terrible. You're the worst. Like, people are going to think you're a fraud. You're going to get terrible reviews. It's going to ruin your career. Like, imposter syndrome, that inner critic, brought up a lot of fear and doubt. And some of you watched me go through that and you saw that it took me a lot longer to write that book than some of my other books. And sometimes I feel like we believe that the more we write and the more we publish, that the imposter syndrome will go away. But I'm here to tell you that that's not always the case, because by the time you've hit 30 books, you think, I should be better at this by now. Everybody else has it figured out. So that's definitely one of the lies that imposter syndrome tells us, is that everybody else has it figured out. But I can guarantee you with 1,000% reality and confidence that almost everybody you're watching who's selling books, who's amazing, who's doing the thing, feels like they don't know what they're doing. I don't know if I have a screenshot of it, but if I do, I'll put it up on here. But you can go to Rebecca Yaros, who wrote the amazing Empyrean series, the Fourth Wing series. She posted on her Facebook when she started working on one of her books recently, maybe earlier this year. She posted, I suck. Everything sucks. I don't know how to write books. And it was a conversation between her and her husband, where her husband was like, wait, how far are you in the book? Oh, you're at the halfway point. Okay, well, drink a Diet Coke and head on with your life. Because everybody, even somebody who's sold like the most popular author in the world, who's writing amazing books that we can't put down, still has those moments where they feel like they don't know what they're doing, like it's not coming together, like they're terrible. So if you feel that way, you are in great company because everyone feels this way. And if you get this lie in your head that everybody knows what they're doing, it's not true. It's just your brain trying to convince you that you're not good enough, not because it's true, but because it wants to keep you safe. That's really the only reason. All right, number two, I'm not ready. This is another lie that imposter syndrome tells us. "Oh, I need to take another course. I really should have to, I need to go through one more editor. This isn't the right story. I need to start a new one." Lots of variations of the "I'm not ready" lie that the imposter tells us. But man, does this hold us back. And, yes, sometimes there's an intuition of like this story needs something more. And when I started writing book 12 of my Shadow Demon saga, I've never written a finale of a 12 book series before. It's a brand new thing for me. I hit a lot of imposter syndrome, but I also hit a skill gap in there where as I began to work on it, I realized I'm not actually ready for this. And it was true. And I think this is where the imposter syndrome stuff gets to be kind of difficult, is because how do we know the difference between when it's true and when we actually are just holding ourselves back? And I don't have an easy answer for this other than to say, check in with your gut, your heart, and say, is it true that I'm not ready? Like when you hear that voice, that inner critic say, you're not ready, you're not good enough for this, is it actually true? Do you have any kind of evidence that this is true? Have you, like for me, when I was working on book 12, I could see it in the actual writing. It wasn't just fear, although probably a part of it that I still haven't admitted to myself. It was also like, I need more pieces to this puzzle. That's why I'm writing the Shadow Game series, is because I realize there's backstory that I need to understand before I can write the finale, because there's other pieces on the table that I don't know yet. And it's kind of an intuitive thing that I just knew I needed more. And I needed, in order to do the end of that series justice, I need a little bit more skill. But also, I have for sure put that book off for 5 years because I'm terrified of whether people will like it. So, like I said, I am not an expert here. I am a fellow traveler. I heard Tara Moore use that expression recently on a podcast, and I was like, yes, this is exactly how I feel. Fellow traveler. I am right there in the thick of it with you all. And the truth is, we're all fellow travelers. Nobody's a perfect expert. Nobody ever doesn't experience imposter syndrome, except maybe people who are narcissistic. Maybe they think they're amazing and they take full confidence. But I'm not ready is something that comes up pretty commonly of, this isn't the right story. I need more edits. I need to learn more. My skill isn't quite there. And we could spend, especially those of us that are susceptible to going down rabbit holes of research and learning and trying to have all the little pieces in place, we could get lost in that for years before we actually do the thing. And it can feel very productive because we're learning and we're expanding our knowledge and all of that, but we're not actually doing the thing of publishing the book or getting ourselves out there, because that's the actual scary thing. So, number three is, if it's hard and I'm struggling, then I must not be good enough. So, I think this one comes up a lot too, with this feeling of everybody else has it figured out. It's kind of another piece of that, of like, if I'm sitting down and this is not coming easily, the words aren't flowing, and I'm not just naturally excited to write every day for 3 hours, then this must not be meant for me. Or if I put out my first two books and they're just really not selling, then I must not be good at this, because if I was good at it and I deserved to be here, I would just naturally be selling books. And that is not true at all. Like, I won't tell you who it is because I don't know if she would want me to share her name, but I have a friend who was writing fantasy series years ago, and she had written 5 books so far in the series, and it had been like a year and a half of publishing books consistently. And she was in a Facebook group and talking about how this exact thing, 5 books consistently coming out every couple of months, like hitting the rapid release, feeling like the books were as good of her ability as she could do, and they weren't selling. Like over the course of 5 books, she had not even made a profit. She was like $600 or $1,000 in the hole from book covers and edits and things like that, which actually is still pretty good. She was almost going to give up. And she just thought, I'm passionate about this. I do have a handful of readers. I want to at least finish up the series. So let me see what I can do. And then through talking to the group, she was like, people were giving her marketing examples like, oh, maybe you should tweak this on the covers. What about if you did this? What if you set the first book free back when that was like, nobody did that? What if you tried this? What if you tried this? And she was like, she told me later that she was in a kind of a precipice, I guess. Like, in between two decisions. On one side, she was thinking, maybe I just give up because if I'm struggling this hard when I have other friends that are taking off after two books, I've written five and nothing's happening, then maybe I'm just not good enough and maybe this won't work. And on the other side, she heard all these marketing things that she'd never tried, and she really focused on her passion for the story, and she just thought, okay, let's give it a shot. And when books 6 and then book 7 came out, it was a 9-book series, she made $900,000 that year. Not because she suddenly became a better writer. They were the same books. It was the same books that she was ready to give up on, but it was because she employed some marketing tactics that actually let people know that the books were out there. So she wasn't struggling because she wasn't good enough. She was struggling because she just hadn't put herself out there. And a lot of the ways that she had been afraid to put herself out there was just based on imposter syndrome. Well, no reader's going to pick this up, or people in this Facebook group aren't going to care, or if I run ads, nobody's going to care. But none of that was true. It was just her inner critic and her imposter syndrome holding her back from doing some of the basic marketing techniques. And she was comparing herself to other people, going, well, they have it all figured out and their books are just better than mine. But the truth was, they were just willing to put themselves out there more. They didn't know what they were doing. They were just experimenting and seeing what stuck. And eventually something did. And the same was true for her. And it went on to sell so many massive number of copies. And, you know, her whole career was changed. But she could have given up if she hadn't had that courage to push through. Okay. Number 4, someone will think or say or find out that I'm not good at this. This is another one where it's honestly tricky, right? Because we're going to get negative criticism. It is going to happen. Like literally no one has probably ever published a book that didn't get a bad review unless just nobody read it, which is another fear I know, which, is coming up soon. But nobody has a perfect experience. Like nobody creates a YouTube channel. Nobody starts an Instagram or social media. Nobody shows up to give a speech. Nobody ever puts themselves out there in any way and then never receives any negative criticism. So if you're waiting, either one, for somebody to give you permission to go for it because they say, oh, I validate you, therefore you are good enough. This is why some people still want to self-publish or want to traditionally publish instead of self-publish, is because they think that if an agent and an editor chose them, then that proves they're good enough. Whereas if they just put themselves out there, how will they ever know, right? That's something my mother said to me when I said I was going to self-publish. Well, how will you ever know you're any good? And, I was like, well, because people will buy it and it will be great and I'll be making money at it. I didn't need somebody at a agency to say you're good enough. I knew the readers would either read it or they wouldn't. And I was willing to take that risk. And obviously it all worked out. But I think that if you're waiting for permission or waiting for validation, you're never going to get it. You're never going to get it. You're going to crumble at the first sign of anybody that criticizes. There are people who are going through the submission process to agencies or to agents, and they're getting 300 plus rejections. It does not mean they're not good enough. It doesn't mean they don't deserve to be there. It doesn't mean their voice doesn't deserve to be heard. It means the market isn't buying that thing right now. And that has nothing to do with quality, or maybe not nothing, but it has less to do with quality and more to do with marketing, right? And so it doesn't actually mean anything about you or your talent or whether you're ready or whether you're good enough. Also, being afraid of getting criticism in a culture where people love to criticize is a valid fear, but it also is a choice. You can either say, I care more about what some random keyboard warrior is going to say to judge me, who probably has never published a book in their lives and is, who knows what they're going through, than I do about the reader that's going to love this book and the reader that's going to find me as their favorite author. Because every author that I know has more positive reviews and experiences than they do negative. The negative reviews are fewer and far between. And the same is true about YouTube comments or nasty responses to newsletters or anything like that. It does happen. It will happen. It is a valid fear, but it's not enough to hold you back, because the number of people that will enjoy what you do, that will resonate with what you do, is going to be tenfold, 100 times, 1,000 times more than the people who criticize. And when someone criticizes, it doesn't mean that that's the truth. It's just their perception. Or sometimes it's just a troll who wanted to hurt your feelings. Sometimes it's just a review on the wrong thing. I have a 1-star review on my book, Beautiful Demons, which is my very first book I ever published back in 2010. And there is a 1-star review on that book to this day that says, "My necklace arrived broken." It is a book with a review for a necklace, and Amazon would never remove it because, for whatever reasons, it got reported several times and it still was on there. It's a 1-star review. It has nothing to do with the quality of my story. There are people that leave me 1-star reviews because they don't like cliffhangers, or because they thought from my YouTube videos that I would be a better writer. Who knows what? There are people who are going to comment negative things. But if you let that hold you back, then you will never get to the people times 1,000 that are going to get something out of it, whose lives are going to be changed by what you're doing, who are going to laugh, who are going to cry, who are going to really connect. And man, I would never in a million years give up all the good things that have happened in my life because of the times I've taken a chance, because I was afraid of the 5, 10, whatever number of times somebody was going to try to hurt me online. I'm sensitive. You guys know this if you've been around for a while. I'm super sensitive. I'm not somebody who has a super thick skin when it comes to that criticism, but I still have to push past that because I know that the amazing things that will come out of this, the income, the life experiences, the readers that will get something out of this, is so much stronger and so much more important. And we'll get to that in a minute too. So, number 5. If I was good enough, or if I was a real author, I wouldn't feel this way. So this goes back to kind of to the struggle piece of it. Like, if I was a real author, I wouldn't feel like this book is so bad, or I wouldn't feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And I feel kind of like, even though I wrote this down, we kind of covered this a lot in the first one, just thinking that real authors or successful people don't ever feel doubt, or don't ever doubt themselves, or have lack of confidence, or afraid to put themselves out there, is false. Everybody feels this, and your feeling of it is not evidence that it's not meant for you. It's just normal human behavior. It's just your brain and your nervous system trying to convince you that this is scary, don't do it, because it doesn't want you to put yourself into an uncomfortable situation, because it just doesn't know. It's unknown. It doesn't mean, it's not predicting the future that bad things are going to happen to you. It's just saying, this is unknown to me, and unknown equals dangerous and scary. And so don't do it. So I'm going to manipulate you in every way that I can to make sure that you don't do something dangerous. And that's all that's happening. All right. So how do we conquer it? How do we get over this? So one of the first things for me that I find super helpful, one of the tools that works for me, and I would love for you, once this video is over or as I'm talking, any tools that have worked for you to do the thing anyway, to feel the fear and do the thing anyway and get yourself out there. If you have tools or ways that you think, or affirmations you use, put them in the comments, please, because it would be super, super helpful. But one is the evidence list, right? I have an entire notebook that I revisit from time to time that is a list of evidence of good things that have happened when I've taken action that I was afraid to take. So this can be anything from, I put the YouTube video up and it got more views, or I got more, some of them are external evidence things, like I survived it. I started a YouTube channel. I was terrified. Like, imposter syndrome kept me from starting a YouTube channel for literally 3 years or more. And when I finally did it, now here I have 84,000 subscribers, and it changed my life and my family's life, and allowed me to reach so many people and like create this amazing community. So that alone is pretty big evidence that the next thing I decide to do is also probably going to work out great, because I did this and I didn't die. And the truth is, not everything you do is going to have evidence that it worked the way that you wanted it to. Like, I've launched courses that didn't go the way I thought. I've had book releases that didn't sell as many books as I thought. I've had disappointments. That's normal. Any entrepreneur, any writer, like even writers who have sold lots and lots of books, are sometimes going to either be afraid of, or actually have their next series or their next book release doesn't do as well as the one that was like the big success, right? Some people say, I know my best success is behind me. And that is true for some people because they started their whole career with some huge breakout bestseller that they can never repeat. And that, that is true. But everybody has disappointments. And that alone is not evidence that we shouldn't do it. It's just simply evidence that what we did in that case did not get us the result that we wanted. So we got to try something different. Maybe it's a different story. Maybe it's a different marketing tactic. Just like the way that my good friend who had 5 books out and wasn't selling anything, that was not evidence that she was a failure or that she was not good enough. It was just simply evidence that she had not actually put herself out there yet. So when we start to combat imposter syndrome, something that you can do for yourself is go through and make a list of all the times in your life you have done something you were scared of. It could be taking a trip somewhere, it could be talking to someone, it could be starting a YouTube channel or, anything, taking a course you were afraid of, standing up and speaking at a group, and every time that it worked out, that you didn't die, that even if it didn't have the outcome you were hoping for, like, okay, I launched a course and it only sold 5 copies or, 5 people bought it or whatever it might be, that you did it and you survived it. And the more you can convince your subconscious mind and your nervous system that, like, I'm going to survive this. I may not have ever experienced this exact thing before, but it's not dangerous in the way that I'm going to die from this. It is simply new. And that's all it is. So start an evidence list. And the more evidence you can have that things have gone way better than you ever experienced, and that the majority of the fear that you had and the worries that you had never materialized, the more you can convince yourself that, like, all these fears in your head about I'm never going to sell a single copy, or nobody's ever going to read this, or somebody's going to call me out for not being good enough, that becomes evidence that, like, those things are likely not going to happen because I've had all these other things that I've been afraid of in the past and they haven't come true either. So the second one is borrowed confidence. So this is a really good one of, do you have anybody in your life that believes in you just so completely that they're your hype person? If you don't, then borrow my confidence. So imagine me sitting here saying, like, let's imagine you're sitting with me here on the floor, or we're on FaceTime or something, and you just told me about the new book that you're writing. Borrow my confidence. Oh my gosh, that sounds so good. Oh, I have been wanting to read something like this. Oh, you know what? Years ago, I read something similar to that, but this sounds even better. I would pick that up in a heartbeat. I would be clicking that on Amazon so fast. I hope you do special editions because I want that on my shelf and I'm going to tell everybody in the world about it. Let me be your hype person. Just replay that part a couple of times. Borrow someone else's confidence. Maybe you're afraid of what might happen or that you're not good enough. So try on somebody else's confidence for a little bit and say, well, what does my biggest cheerleader have to say about that? And when they pump you up, and even if you do have somebody like that in your life, then tell them, I need you to pump me up. Whenever I'm feeling resistance, I need you to just lift me up. I say this to George all the time. I need you to just tell me it's going to be good. And then he will go off on a rampage and be like, oh my gosh, I've loved every single book. Do you know how much you've accomplished? And he will hype me up. And I know I'm very lucky to have that person. And I hope for you that you do have somebody in your life you could turn to, a best friend or a partner or a parent or a child or anybody that you could turn to and ask them to do that for you. But if you don't, borrow my confidence in you, or come into the Heart Breathings writing community. We do writing sprints all the time, and just say, I need somebody to hype me up. I really need some hype energy right now. And we will do that for you. Number 3 is kind of the minimum viable product rule. This is exactly what got me to start this YouTube channel in the first place, because I was stuck in that perfectionism loop of, like, I need the perfect background and the perfect microphone and the perfect camera, and I need to lose 30 pounds and get my teeth whitened and, like, get braces. Like, I had crazy ideas about what I needed to do to be successful on YouTube. And it was my business mentor, Amber, was like, no, webcam, basic microphone, we're doing this. Minimum viable product. It does not have to be perfect. It just has to be like 10% ready. You have to have 10% of the knowledge, 10% of the skills you need, 10% ready. Let's go. And I just set a deadline and I did it. And if I hadn't, I would have lost out on the most amazing experiences of my life. No joke. So if you're stuck behind this perfectionism, just say, I only need to be 10% ready. If you go back and read my very first book, Beautiful Demons, it is nowhere near the quality and skill of writing. It's still a great book. I still believe in it. I love it. But I've gotten so much better over the course of time. But if I had waited to be as good as I am now, when I published that book, I would have still been waiting 20 years later. This year will be 16 years since I published that book. Imagine if I was still sitting here 16 years later with no book published. I wouldn't have this YouTube channel. I wouldn't have this house. I wouldn't have all these books, all these fans, all these followers. I wouldn't have the skills and the knowledge that I have, the satisfaction that I have in storytelling, because I said I had to be better. But the truth is, getting better doesn't come from waiting. Getting better at it comes from taking the action and doing the thing. Like, I wasn't going to get better at YouTube by researching and trying a better camera. I got better at YouTube because I posted onto YouTube and the first few videos, and even for the first year or so, my voice is a lot higher because I was more nervous. I've settled into that. I've done 800 something videos now, who knows how many. So it's more casual. I'm much more confident on camera. I didn't get that because I waited to be better. I did it because I've just been doing the thing for 8 years, and eventually I got better at it. And that will be true of you too. Even if you feel like your books aren't great, or they're not as good as your favorite author, or they're not where they need to be, or it's not the very best you could do, doesn't have to be 10%. Has to be 10% as good as you need it to be. 10% ready. Minimum viable product. Just get it out there. And then once you put that book out, I've said this before, talking about rough drafts in particular, you will learn more from finishing one book than from starting 50 different rough drafts. The same way of you will learn more from publishing a single book than you will from writing 10. You will learn more by actually posting a YouTube video and getting it done and going through the editing process than you ever would just watching other people talk about how to do YouTube or taking courses. If you want to learn and you want to get better, you have to take action. So do it imperfectly and know that you have full permission to do that, and it will be good enough for that moment. And then you'll get better. Fourth tool that you can use is the alter ego tool. I kind of love this one. Todd Herman, I think it is, has a book called The Alter Ego Effect. It's very good. And you probably have heard people talk about alter egos before. And we have some famous people who have famous alter egos, like Beyonce has Sasha Fierce. And there's multiple that you could point to out there. And I think that part of it is just saying, I feel like my identity, I'm not where I need to be this author. But if I take on this pen name and I take on these qualities of my alter ego, the person I want to be, it helps us kind of close that gap, the confidence gap, the identity gap. Like Sarra Cannon might not be right, but this version of me, like if I don't know if I named that version. I have a Pinterest board for my alter ego. This is something that we did in my Follow Through Fix membership, which is a monthly membership. We actually did an entire month's talk on imposter syndrome. So some of you might have heard me talk about some of this stuff before, but it can be very powerful to sit down and create an alter ego for yourself. So if you are struggling to, like, it's truly crippling you to not be able to sit down and write or be able to put yourself out there because you're terrified of, you've got imposter syndrome so bad, create an alter ego. And it's your alter ego that presses record. It's your alter ego that shows up at the keyboard. It's your alter ego who posts on Instagram and talks to your fans and writes that newsletter, right? It doesn't have to be you. It can be this persona that you take on that has that identity of best-selling author, of badass writer, of talented person. It can be, have aspects of the people that you admire most. Create that alter ego. See if that works for you. The fifth tool, this is kind of the same as the 10% ready, is just to take action. So I feel like we kind of covered that already. So we'll skip that one and say that the fifth rule, and this is maybe one of the most impactful, is to focus on other people. So when I think about my skill, what I have to say, the quality or seeing my face on video, anytime that I'm putting myself out there, even if it's a course that I feel like, oh, what if I'm not qualified enough to teach that? Or it's a YouTube video, like, what if I don't know, what if I don't teach anybody anything about imposter syndrome? Like, doubts come up with every single thing I do. If I'm thinking about myself and how people will judge me and how I will fail to show up as my best self, I am much more likely to fall prey to fear and imposter syndrome. But if I focus on you, and I focus on the people that will get something out of this, the people that will love this book, the people that will watch this video and have tears streaming down their face, or the people that will have an aha moment of like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. Or the people who will like posting something about writing a series, maybe it makes something click and then they get to write something great because of something I said as one small piece of their journey. That's the reason that I do it. And is it worth it to me to put it out there for you, hoping that it's going to click for you? Yes, 1000%. Am I scared? Is there still going to be somebody who possibly criticizes and doesn't think I'm doing a good job? 1000% every time, always. But it'll be one person who's disappointed, one person who doesn't like it, and it'll be 40,000 people who do. And even if it was only 5 people who do, it's worth it, right? You're changing lives, you're putting yourself out there. And once you change those 5 lives, those people will tell more people, and then you'll change 10 lives. And then that's how this whole YouTube channel has gone. That's how every bestseller ever on the planet was, it's, you got to put it out there first. And we don't know what that outcome is going to be. I can't promise you that how many people are going to watch your videos. I can't promise you how many people are going to buy your books or, buy your art in whatever way. I don't know. I don't know how many positive reviews or negative reviews or what your sales ranking is going to be. All of that stuff gets out of our hand to a degree. But what I can promise you is that if you let imposter syndrome win and you let fear hold you back, you're never going to experience any piece of this that you ever wanted or dreamed of. You will be robbing yourself of that experience, of at least even knowing what's possible for you. You will dream it and then you will steal it from yourself because you let fear win. And I know that sounds harsh in a way, and it also sounds like, yeah, but how? How? You got to feel the fear and do it anyway. You have to recognize it. So one of the first things you can do is whenever that voice comes up that says, like, there's probably a script that it has for you. You're not good enough. It could be someone's voice, like a teacher that you had or a parent that you had. It could be some past trauma or things like that. But usually there's a script that runs. You don't know how to do that. You're not good enough. Whatever it is, learn to recognize it. That's the first step. Acknowledge it when it comes up and realize this is not me. This is not my truth. This is not the ultimate truth. This is my fear talking. This is my imposter syndrome talking. I am not an imposter. This is just the fear that is trying to keep me from doing something big with my life. And instead of seeing it as something that has to hold you back, start seeing it as, oh my gosh, that's evidence that I'm doing something big. That's evidence I'm in the arena, I'm doing the thing. And that is a clear sign to keep going. That's the first step. Second step is to start trying things on and seeing what helps you move past it. So any of these things that I've talked about, it could be recognizing the perfectionism and deciding that you're going to allow yourself permission for minimum viable product, that you're going to try it once and you're going to promise that you get better next time. Create a list of all the times, like your evidence list of all the times it's worked out and you've survived it. Make a affirmations board if you want. Create an alter ego and try it on for size. Give them a name, give them an attitude. And every time you feel that resistance and that imposter syndrome, step into that version of you and be like, no. This version of me, this alter ego does not listen to that stuff. She sits down and she writes, and this is what we're going to do. And even when I think about the evidence piece of it, another thing doesn't have to be like evidence in your past. It could be evidence today. So if you acknowledge for a moment that you say, I don't feel like writing today because I know I'm at the midpoint and it sucks. And this whole book is the worst thing that anyone's ever written. And I just can't do it. I think I'm going to start a new story. And suddenly that alarm bell goes off where you're like, oh man, I've been through this before. I recognize this. You recognize it. And then you say, okay, let me create some evidence here that I can actually do this. So you put on that alter ego, you put on some music, you do whatever you need to do to get into the mood of writing. You sit down and you write. And then afterward, you create part of that as your evidence and say, I was resistant today, but here's evidence that I can still show up when I'm feeling this fear, that I can still make a difference in my own life. I can still write good words, even when I thought they were going to be terrible, and start creating that evidence. And so next time you feel the resistance, you have proof that you can trust yourself. You have proof that you can do this. I had asked people to kind of put some of their questions in the chat on my post tab, but I feel like I mostly answered it. Like somebody did say, I fear publishing a book and never having any sales. And I know that part of that is the skill gap, the knowledge gap. Like I don't know yet how to build a mailing list. I don't know yet how to do these things, which isn't wrong, right? You do still need to learn those things, but also just taking a deep breath and saying, all I have to do is one step at a time. Publish and Thrive, by the way, for those of you that are like, I don't know how to do this, I don't know if I'm going to get any sales, is going to open up in a week. So I would love for you guys to get on my newsletter list, join the Rough Draft Challenge, whatever you want to do, but be on the lookout for that, because Publish and Thrive is a course where I'm going to teach you how to do every single step of that. But whether you take my course or you watch YouTube videos or you research it or you just get an Amazon account and you start figuring it out, like that's what I did. I didn't take a course to learn how to self-publish. Nobody had courses back then. It was 2010. It was like the Wild West. You just started an account and you just read through the information and you just figured it out. And, first book, handful of sales. Next book, a few more. Next book started to take off. So you just learn by doing, right? So whether you are going to close the knowledge gap with a course or with, some information that you learn online or whatever, or you're going to actually just teach yourself, you can do this. And any evidence that you have of like, I didn't know how to tie my shoes at one point, but I learned how to do it. I didn't know how to walk at one point, but I learned how to do it, can become your evidence list of like, this is something I'm capable of. This is something that isn't going to stop me. Let me know if you guys want to do a full like Q&A on this. I certainly didn't expect to talk for an hour, but this is kind of how this YouTube channel is going these days. I just have a lot to say, but I hope that this was super helpful for you. We are in the middle of the Rough Draft Challenge, so if you haven't joined us, it's never too late. Set a smaller goal, plan for the next 20 days or so. In the comments I will leave, or in the description, I will leave a link to my newsletter list if you want to download our planner. If you want to get on my list too, so you can be notified as soon as Publish and Thrive opens in about a week. I can't believe it. Definitely come join us for that. We are making a move. This is kind of a big deal, from Teachable, where my courses have always been held, over to Kajabi. So if you have taken any of my courses before, you're going to see some information coming through your inbox with emails and invites to join the new course site. It's going to be so great. Like, we have a beautiful app. The course is so much nicer to navigate. We're going to be able to go live inside the course. The emails are going to be really great. So I'll have some information on that for you guys soon. But what I want to leave you with this discussion is that everybody has fear. Anytime that you go to do something outside your comfort zone, or you go to put yourself in a new position of leadership or identity or knowledge, or just to do something big with your life, to go after a goal, imposter syndrome, fear, and whatever that script is that runs in your mind is going to run, not because it's true, but because it's trying to keep you safe. If you can begin to recognize that voice of the inner critic and instead just say, I hear you, but that's not true, and start building up a set of tools for yourself, like the alter ego, the evidence list, confidence, a hype person, and start to focus on the good that you can do in the world. If you can overcome that imposter syndrome, it's going to make it a lot easier to show up. And I know, like I said, fellow traveler, I know it's not going to be something that we ever cure, or that we just snap our fingers and the doubt goes away. Every time we push ourselves to a new level, it's going to be there again. But the key is not letting it hold you back from going after your dreams. And we're in this together. All right. If you are not subscribed to this channel, I hope that you will subscribe if this resonated with you. I will be live on Saturday, July 11th at 4 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to talk about how to get through the messy middle, like when that imposter syndrome hits, or when you aren't sure what happens next in your story, or you just feel stuck, or you're feeling a lot of resistance. How do you keep going? That will be a live stream. So if you are watching this when it first comes out, come join us on July 11th. I already have it scheduled here on my YouTube channel, so you can just hit that notification button to get a notification when that goes live. And otherwise, I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments what resonated most and if you have any tools that you use to help you overcome imposter syndrome. And I will see you guys in the next video. All right, bye.